Welcome back to the Stitchwitch podcast. We're here. I'm your host, Ourielle. We're talking about stash, we're talking about spring, we're talking about cast-ons, we're talking about plans. If you want some of that good stuff, keep on watching. Okay, I just got back from filming our first podcast episode, so if I am tired or long-winded, or if there's mohair in my face, that is why. But I've overstayed my welcome already, so we're going to try to keep this one as short and sweet as I possibly can. The sunlight is quickly falling over the horizon, so we have somewhat of a hard stop. I have a couple of different ideas for my wardrobe this spring. First of all, I want to establish like what the goals are for this roundup. One, it's not an exhaustive list of goals, or it's not an exhaustive list of pattern ideas. So this is not going to be like your everything that you want to, like have for your spring inspiration video, blah, 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 blah. That is like an infinitely harder question to answer because there's a lot of stuff in this world, beautiful patterns that like we will not be able to get to and get through. Rather, this is going to be mostly a focus on stuff that I already have in my stash. Whether it is patterns or yarns or ideally both. We're going to also be focusing on like an alternative basics wardrobe because I just, first of all, lack anything that is not like heavy knitwear. And we are quickly approaching the weather where that kind of thing is like no longer acceptable. Like it's 75 degrees outside today and I'm like struggling in this very, very thick double knit cardigan knit in like woolly wool. As beautiful as it is, I do want to focus on some like more layerable basic pieces, and unfortunately what that does mean is I also want to focus on like darker plain colors. Like I have the two wolves inside of me, but yeah, the first wolf inside of me is one that goes to the stores, looks at the pastel yarns, and I'm like, oh my god, I love neons, I love pastels, so cute, so colorful. How many colors can I throw together into a piece? Like, yes, I want all of that and then some. The other part of me realizes that as much as I love all those colorful colors, I also just really like wearing black, gray, charcoal, like a little navy, a little oxblood, like potentially a little plum. Of course, like with spring and summer, there's a better way to experiment. But I'm really fundamentally lacking like any knits that are black. Like I haven't knit a single black item for myself at all. I've definitely knit items with like black stripes or like sometimes there's a charcoal here and there, but like I need, frankly, some like black and gray monochrome stuff. Is that the most fun? Absolutely not. But like, can I maybe find a way to like add that into my wardrobe? I'm going to have to. The other thing is that I would like simple construction with fun details. Again, this is kind of like the basics with a twist kind of thing. I have a lot of basics in my pattern library. And so as much as I say something with a twist, I also mean it would also be nice to do something simple. And I also am looking for stuff that is smaller gauge or looser gauge because again, we're talking about spring, summer knits, things that ideally I'm wearing through transition. And also I work in an office and not a particularly strict office, actually like a very lax office, all things considered. It's a pretty like wear whatever you want as long as it's like not dirty kind of office and as long as it's not like pajamas. But I do want to have some stuff that like I could wear to the office and then wear out afterwards and not feel like, uncomfortable in either situation. So versatile, simple, basic, light, flowy, fiber construction ideally is like not 100% wool because that would be really warm. And personally, something that I could easily incorporate into my other wardrobe pieces, which is like kind of a given considering I don't usually go out of my way to pick stuff that is something that I normally would wear, and especially if it's going to be in black or neutral, like dark, grungy color, I don't think it'll be that difficult. Okay, and I have a couple of categories, and again, remember all of this is going to be coming from my stash, so, look forward to the goth girl dupes video that I'm going to do later, and I'm saying goth girl in quotes again, like the whole thing that goth is a subculture not based in style, but rather like music and values or whatever, right? Anyway, we're talking about stuff that I have in my stash that I want to knit, and I'm definitely not going to do like all of them. I have categories, so ideally I'm doing like one in at least each category, or at least one in each category, but I'm really just like talking out my ass here in terms of like what I have in my stash, what I have in my pattern library, and like trying to find a way to make things work. Hi, hello, editing me here. I forgot to mention that I have a spring mood board, which should probably inform the rest of like this video. So the color palette for what I'm looking for is this. Hopefully I'm editing it so it's next to me. This and then black and gray, which I probably will do in post. My cat is here. That is part of the what is going to inform my palette for the season. I say this as a way to like deter myself from buying like random colors of yarn that I don't necessarily need because they're technically summer fibers. So yeah, that's it. Keep that in mind while we continue. Thank you. Bye. So number one I want to do is some kind of long sleeve blouse, and it could be any kind of long sleeve blouse, like literally anything labeled blouse from petiteknit or My Favorite Things would work here. Just something that is not a sweater, right? Something that is lighter, breezier, like doesn't have like a heavy drape to it. But I have a couple of patterns already. The sevilla, the summer lotus, and the klara. So let's break down each one individually. The sevilla I attempted last year in a fluffier yarn, and it ended up being one of those boxy torso small armhole, which like, yes, the armhole doesn't need that much space. Like my armpit is all the way up here, and like I already have a chunky arm, so like that's, you know, like it would probably be fine, but I don't like the feeling of having something like right here under my armpit. Like it's just not my favorite. I prefer an armhole to be more generous. And so I made the size that would fit my bust measurement, but I didn't really like how tight the armhole was. And so for the sevilla summer, I would like to actually make a larger size, or like figure out the armhole shaping to be a little bit different, and potentially make it in drop spell. All of these are kind of like subject to change. I only have so much summer yarn anyway, so it's gonna either be this or that or the other, right? But I have some of this in stock already, and I have enough of it that I can do, you know, the whole thing with the sleeves and the body, right? My only issue is really like if I knit a larger size, will the armhole actually increase a significant amount? Because, you know, like between whatever I knit was like a small maybe, you know, according to the upper bust, if I go up to a large, I don't actually know if you're adding any more than like maybe 6 stitches, right? If you're adding 6 stitches on something like 3.5 or 4mm needles, like I just don't feel like it's going to be that big of a difference. It might be more worthwhile for me to jerry rig a couple of sizes together and see if I can kind of free will construction that way. And it could be a fun challenge to be like, okay, like you know what you want, but you don't know how to get there. Can you maybe try to figure it out yourself? It would be the first time I've ever modified anything like that. I'm saying this as if like deepening the armhole is like a really big mod, but to me it is. It's really scary. I don't know like if that'll change my pickup rate for my sleeves. Again, I knit a lot of hours, but I like don't have that much skill in terms of like knowing how to like change things to my preferences. So this would be a very interesting one. The summer lotus I think would be interesting, if only because it's one of those like light mohair-y sheer blouses, and I don't necessarily have mohair that I want to use this with, but I do have very, very, very fine cone merino that I think could work very well. I'm thinking of holding it double or triple because it's extremely fine, like spiderweb fine, cobweb width, and you know, it's not going to have that fluffy halo effect, but actually not having the fluff might make it a better transitional piece and potentially even a more long-term wearable piece. I don't know how the longevity will be in terms of pilling and stuff, because you know, if you want a piece to stay robust for longer, it might be useful to carry it either with mohair or silk. I mean, mostly silk for that strength, and also because, you know, when you're dealing with a very fine cashmere or merino, it can pill when it's like, you know, rubbing up on itself. So a very fine yarn on 6mm needles might like not be a great thing, but it is a big needle size, and so it would work up nice and quick. It's a free pattern, so I saved it to my library. Granted, I don't know how it necessarily compares to paid patterns. I'm like not opposed to paying for a pattern, right? Like I buy a lot of patterns, you know, they sit in my library and I don't make all of them, but at the same time, like if you're knitting on this thing for like dozens and dozens and dozens of hours and you're paying a lot of money for the yarn, and then like you're gonna have this thing in your closet forever, I would rather buy a pattern than use a free one if the result is not negligible, right? Like if I actually prefer the paid pattern, I would rather pay for the pattern and then knit this whole thing, which is already going to take like hours and hours of my life. Like I might as well spend $6 on a pattern. It's not worth it for me to knit a free version that has like inferior aspects, especially because I don't really feel as comfortable fixing things as other more experienced knitters or even like more experimental knitters might. So for me, I'm putting Summer Lotus down here because I have that pattern, but if I look closer and I don't necessarily love the way that it looks, I might change that out for like one of the blouse number 1 or like alternatives like cloud blouse, whatever. I have the cloud as well. The last one that I'm really excited for is the Klara blouse. Now this is one that I don't actually have in stock pattern wise, but all but actually do, right? Like this is one that I have wanted for a really long time and I know I'm going to make it eventually, so I should probably just buy the pattern. I love this because it's one of those like plain long sleeve blouses with a detachable collar, and I could see myself making this in a lot of different colors. So the first idea that I had was knit the body in black, knit a white collar, have that be like a really simple basic style of blouse. At any given time in my life, I always have at least one kind of like cutesy collar blouse, white collar, black blouse. The one that I have now is velvet and I love it. It has like a beautiful little lace trim, but it's not a sweater and it's not one that I made. And now that I make my own clothing, it's really hard to want to wear a plastic blouse that I didn't make and has like, you know, certain design flaws, and like, you know, some of the buttons are kind of cheap and they're sewn on with like elastic cord and not like, you know, something nicer. So I would love to make my own version is what I'm saying. If I were to make it in black, I would knit it in drop spell and I would hold it with one strand of that merino to give it like a slightly marled texture. Or I was also thinking of doing it in Lion Brand 24/7 cotton sparkle because they have a twinkly black. And I like the idea of like the sequin yarn. I know it's like slightly coming back as a micro trend in the knitting world, and this is a version of a trend that I could apply to my own life. Like I do like a little bit of sparkle, not necessarily in all contexts, but I do like a black twinkle sometimes, and I do think it could be cute, and it would break up the sweater just a tiny bit. And then I was thinking, okay, black with white collar would be really classic, but because huzzah, detachable collar, you could change that collar out to a different color. So I was also thinking, okay, make a fuchsia collar, make a lilac collar, make a really bright neon chartreuse yellowy color, all of which like I love and think would be really cute. Also with that white collar, you could do pastel bases. So I could do like a blue, like you know, a really cute Madeline blue, right? Or do a red or do a pink or whatever. Like it's just a very endlessly versatile piece. For me, at least, I do think it's actually quite nice. And I also think that collar is actually not as frou-frou and like frilly as a lot of other collars I've seen. I love an exceptionally frilly collar. I'm no stranger to frilly collars. I'm no stranger to like excessively feminine details and like, you know, all of the like lacy Victorian stuff. I love it. I love it. I can't get enough. However, I will also say this one being a little bit more minimalist, but still having a little bit of that scalloped edge is probably more wearable under more circumstances and probably is a little bit easier to make. My only qualm is that on Ravelry, the designer hasn't specifically mentioned the difference in yardage between the collar and the blouse itself, or at least I don't think they did. I'm having a slightly difficult time deciding whether or not I have enough yarn to cast that on immediately with like a smaller amount of knitting for all of yarn that I have right now versus if I want to wait and hold out for later. But yeah, if I can do this with my cone yarn, I will have everything in stash and I can just like get started. So now that I'm hearing myself say that, it might just be like a thing that I want to cast on sooner than later. Okay, next I have plain short sleeve t-shirt. And when I say plain short sleeve t-shirt, I don't necessarily mean the design is plain or that the yarn itself is plain. I just mean that it's not necessarily lace. It's like a stockinette thing. So two that are really similar are going to be the Harvest Tee by Ozetta and the Plain Yoke by Leknit. These are pretty much just like the same sweater t-shirt. I have them both. I don't know why I have both of these patterns. At the time when I had bought the Harvest Tee, it was when Ozetta was having her like very big moment in the sun, and obviously she is still having a big moment in the sun. She's a very popular designer and for good reason, but I was like, oh my god, Ozetta, like I want to make, and then I realized the needle sizes are just too small and I don't really want to make something that's skinny and small. This was in winter. Now we're approaching summer and I have never knit anything. I mean, I have knit some tanks, but I've never knit a t-shirt, or I've never knit a t-shirt. And I do think, you know, with not as much sleeve, it may not be like as much of a headache as I think it's going to be. I just have to make sure that I have in my Chagoo Shorty set needles that are the right size. I don't want to knit anything that is smaller than what I own because that would suck. But it's considering I already have the pattern and I'll tell you what my yarn is. I think choosing between the Ozetta t-shirt and then again the Plain Yoke by Leknit is pretty much the only decision I have to make. I'm leaning a little bit towards Harvest. It's a little bit of a sportier fit, I think, but the Leknit one is also pretty. I just don't know how those increases are going to look on plant-based yarn. And I don't often work with 100% cotton yarn, but the yarn that I'm thinking of is Patton's Grace, which is a 100%, I believe, mercerized cotton, but it's like a shiny, satiny cotton. I began working with it last year in a petite knit Audrey top, and I didn't like the way that it was coming out. And again, this could have been my inexperience. Or maybe it wasn't last year, it was like the year before last year, because last year I was going through like stuff and I wasn't knitting. But yeah, 2 years ago, I was knitting with Patton's Grace, and I found it really difficult to apply it into a shirt that I liked. blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, I would like to make it into a t-shirt this year. and this is going to be one of those tops that is like not necessarily a black top, which is like what I want, but it will be a basic, and I will be able to like layer it or wear it on its own. It's one of those pieces that's going to be simple enough to wear to work, and it's, you know, a knitted t-shirt, so I think it's going to look a lot cleaner than like, you know, your basic graphic t-shirt, which, you know, I wouldn't wear to work. So it's going to have, you know, that shine, which I think looks a little bit dressy. It's going to have, you know, a more precise fit, of course, because you're knitting it for yourself, and it'll be a swooshier, lighter material. I think the cotton is going to sit really nicely, but yeah, I'm just not sure about whether I'm going to choose the harvest tee or the plain yoke tee. And then the last one that I want to make is a shirt called A Fire and Ice by James Watts. This is not going to be made with plain yarn. This is going to be made with some superwash yarn that I have. I don't really love superwash yarn. I find it to be, yeah, like in the winter, I don't like superwash yarn. I'm finding that I am definitely more willing to give it a try as a summer fiber. So I have a couple of different colors. One of them that I'm thinking of is Unique Decay from Earth. I bought this years ago at Nitty City in the city, and I could never figure out like what I actually wanted to make with it. And this is one of those things where like I bought it really early on. It was maybe one of the first dozen skeins of yarn that I ever purchased. And you see it in the ball. And I think the color might actually be like Libra. So I was like, oh my God, like I have to buy it because it's like my sign or whatever. I didn't realize that variegated yarn is actually kind of a bitch to work with. But James Watts did his thing, and I think it actually looks really fantastic. Yeah, I like the design. I like that it's modular. I like that the modularity is an unusual shape. I like that it's a t-shirt, and I do think that the superwash is going to help because it's going to be extremely drapey and flowy and kind of like, you know, floppy, which will be nice. And I like the fact that it's not going to be super warm because it's going to be superwash treated. So even though it is 100% wool, which is like usually not something that's super ideal for warmer weather, but you know, because it has that the hairs on the wool are stripped off, I do think it'll be a lot less like heavy and hot. And also I'm hoping that the superwashness of it will make the stretching a little bit better. So it'll kind of grow a lot after blocking, and it'll kind of stretch out a little bit more, and hopefully continue to stretch a little bit as I continue to wear it this summer. And of course, superwash treated wool will be easier to clean and like garment care for in the warmer weather, especially given that like, you know, your armpits might like end up stinking and stuff or whatever. So yeah, those are it for my short sleeve tops. Next I have stripes. Now I am a little bit worried about this. Originally I had an idea to use Malabrio Rios for this. I have 2 balls of 2 different colors each, so 4 balls total to make a top. That is like 800 to 900 yards of DK weight yarn or worsted weight yarn. Usually that is enough for me to make a sweater, but I'm looking at these sweater patterns and I don't have a ton to compare off with because I've never made a garment like this before, but I'm looking at the Olga blouse and I'm looking at the Frankie blouse? Frankie sweater? I have them both. And I thought that that would be enough because for a sweater, that is usually enough for me. I'm looking at these and like my size is like 1100, 1200 meters, and I don't know if that is real. Is what I'm gonna say. If it is real, then I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might have to add like a contrast stripe for, you know, the collar, cuff, hems, all that ribbing, and like hope that that's gonna be enough to offset everything else. Otherwise, we're just not gonna have stripes. But I love stripes and I love a petite knit pattern. And I really want to use the superwash yarn from my stash. It's been sitting in my stash for half a year now. I purchased this Malabrio yarn in September. And it's already March. It's actually the end of March, so it's almost April, and I'm really worried because if I don't use it soon, we're gonna promptly hit the 1-year mark, and this is the thing where like stash just really like creeps up on you. If I don't make this stripes long sleeve version, I could do like a half sleeve or even like a 3/4 length sleeve, and I think that would definitely cut off a lot of yardage, right? Like if I'm cutting off basically 1 sleeve's worth, right? Like if I'm cutting off this much of 1 sleeve and then this much of another sleeve, like I do feel like, yeah, you're basically knitting 1 sleeve in the body. And also with the fact that these blouses are much more close fitting to the body compared to the Olga sweater, for example, which is very boxy, or the Frankie. Is that a sweater also? I don't know if I have the sweater or the blouse pattern. Anyway, this is to say, I'm hopeful that if I knit these like DK weight blouses on worsted weight yarn with a slightly larger needle, I can get through the sweater with a little bit less yardage requirement, and also if I have to, I might just crop. But stripes for spring. I love stripes in general, and I would love to have stripes in like a slightly, you know, more spring friendly garment. So yeah, those are the two patterns that I have in stash, and that is the yarn that I would use had I the choice to like put them together. Last, I have tank tops slash sleeveless top, and there's two. One is the sabai. I have the sabai too, and that one is just very, very simple. I don't really have, I think that one is like literally just like a front panel and a back panel, and you seam it up at the sides, and it's like not a big deal. I would like to knit this in like a day or two. I have 2 skeins of Noro Sonata in Catmint, which is like my favorite little lilac-y color, and I think that is like a perfectly fine summer yarn. So that would be nice just to have like a lilac little tank. I also have a Bomulin from Drops, which is like a miserable linen yarn. Like it just feels like rope. And if I wanted to make a black sabai, I would do that. Will it hurt me? Probably, yes, significantly. But I do think it would look nice. And then the last top that I want to make is the Ringo top. This is gorgeous. I think May Bruns is popularly known for the jellyfish top. That I feel like has construction that people have nothing but complaints about. So I'm a little bit worried, but I'm looking at the pattern projects for this, and every single person who has knit this looks fantastic, amazing. And I'm seeing a lot of bustier girls wearing this top, and I think, oh my goodness, maybe I actually might be able to look good at this. And I love the cables. They're so elegant, so pretty. Love the rib. It's just like the snatchiest little tank top I've ever seen, and something about it is more appealing to me than the fingering weight ribbed tanks. Not that I don't love the look of those, I just don't want to knit fingering weight ribbing for my boob circumference. Like that's just gonna be a lot of work. If we made like DK weight ribbed tank tops, like I would be okay with that. But yeah, fingering weight is just like, it's not gonna happen. I don't think I could see myself doing that. I don't have the pattern for this. I don't know why it's included in my stash. Maybe because it's a tank top and I figure I at least could have yarn for it. It's knit in cotton yarn in the sample. It's knit with Drops Saffron, which I've never worked with before. Currently, Drops Saffron is on sale for very, very cheap on lindahobby.com. I've only purchased from Linda Hobby once, and I just don't love ordering from Drops. Like, yes, the yarn is exceptionally affordable, and, you know, Drops seems like a perfectly fine company as far as, like, you know, European corporations go, but I do just feel like I don't ever trust the color outcome. Like, anytime I buy something from them, it's just not the color that I think it's going to be, and so it is a little bit frustrating for that reason. I don't know what the plan is going to be for this one, but I just wanted to mention it here because like it is just such a gorgeous pattern, and this designer is one that is like on my radar, especially because her other stuff is like gaining popularity right now. But yeah, that is definitely one of the other options. And then last, I have a category for lacy slash meshy things, and this is probably going to be like the most alternative this podcast is going to get because you're seeing more of that like lacy, airy, breezy look. One is the Lachrymae by James N. Watts. I normally would never, ever touch this pattern with a 10-foot pole because it looks so complicated, but I saw on his Instagram, which if you're not on his Instagram, please get on it. He's so funny. And also he plays a lot of instruments. He's like very, very talented woodwind player. But he told me, he told me personally, no, he posted on his Instagram that the Lachrymae is actually a very easy design because it's very airy, and the lace, although it looks complicated, is actually quite intuitive over a short number of repeats. Do I believe the designer at his word? I want to. I feel like he's a very compelling character and I want to believe him. But at the same time, I don't think he knows how much I don't like making lace. Lace is hard. I would say like stockinette up here, color work right after. I love color work. Cables, lace, like it's just hard. It's hard. You don't know what your thing's gonna look like. You have to resolve it the next round. I don't know how to fix mistakes. Like you can easily fix your cable mistakes. It is a little like gut-wrenching and scary, but you can kind of figure it out because it's very similar to fixing stockinette mistakes. I don't think fixing lace mistakes is the same. It's like very much so a different beast altogether. So if he says it's the same, great. If not, we're screwed. And the thing that really scares me is that there's not like stockinette panels in the middle. So with my like drift sweater, for example, it is lace. So I know that I just need to lock in for like a couple minutes per moment. And if I mess up, there's a lot of stockinette in the middle so that I can always like return to the basics and then like check my stitch count and like we can go from there. This, however, is lace all the way around. I will say the result is stunning. It is like a beautiful, beautiful design. And I've knit James Watts patterns before and they've all been pretty good. So I figure like this one shouldn't be that different. And I do have like that beautiful co merino, the one that I showed you last time. Absolutely gorgeous. I was thinking I could do it in the dark gray, or I could even do it in the white, or I could even do it in the blue. But he also said that it's very, very short yardage requirement because so much of the pattern is air and you're knitting it on huge needles. So that was compelling. Big needles to me is always compelling. Like, it's not necessarily comfortable to knit. I think I like the idea of getting through more square footage in a shorter amount of time. Next, I have the ranunculus. I was wearing the ranunculus earlier and then I changed, but I love that thing. I love my winter ranunculus. I knit it in Line Brand Roving Origins in the lilac color with drops mohair, and it is fantastic. It's like one of my favorite sweaters of all time. I knit the smallest size, or even the second smallest size. I knit I think the smallest size, and I love it, but I cannot continue wearing it. Like, I wore it yesterday and it was like way, way, way too hot because you're dealing with roving wool, which is exceptionally warm, and then you're also carrying it with like a silk mohair, which is fluffy. And as much as I love that sweater, I could not see myself wearing that again. It's just way, way, way too suffocating. Like I mentioned, the Cascade Cantata comes in a couple of really cute purples, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I could reknit in a color that I enjoy, but that wouldn't really, like, as much as I love it, and I think it would be very wearable and very easy, and I already know that I like my original ranunculus, I don't think it would fit my MO of like wanting to knit more dark colors, neutral colors, things that I would typically buy. And I guess this is a moot point because the ranunculus is not really a sweater that I would normally be attracted to on the store shelves. It's just like, what's the word? It's like not a very contemporary sweater design, and it's also not like vintagey in the way that I would normally be attracted to garments, but it is a very fun knit. It's a very, very addicting knit. Again, it's knit on huge chunky ass needles, so it could happen really fast. And I've never knit one in a summer garment or a summer fiber. So like, there are a lot of reasons why it could be compelling. This would be one where I have the pattern in stash, but not the yarn in stash. But there is a yarn that I'm really eager to try, and then I could kind of like justify buying the yarn, even though I don't necessarily. Yeah, I don't have that many summer yarns, so I wouldn't really even feel bad buying new yarn. This is one of those things where like sometimes you don't have the materials necessary for doing a project, and like, you know, so be it. And then the last one is the Otherloops lace loop sweater. Now this is a long sleeve sweater. It's not at all like a short sleeve tee or anything. She has a tee version of this. I just don't own that pattern, and so it went to count as stash. But I was thinking to do like a normal version, like gray with maybe like this neon green, or even like black with the neon green. I think could be cute. The reason why I have this listed as like a summer knit is, one, I think the colors are prime real estate for you to choose something like edgy, because stripes I think pair well with like edgier style, and two, it has a shit ton of eyelets in it, so like every other band is just like full of holes, and they're small holes, they're very elegant holes. I could still like get away with wearing this in the office, especially because if I'm dealing with like a wool or even a cotton merino blend, or even if I hold two fingering weight yarns together, I feel like you could definitely 100% wear it somewhere, and it's not like you're seeing skin. It's more just like there are technically eyelets in the fabric, and it is giving you a little bit of a breeze, but it's nothing salacious. So again, pattern in stash, yarn could be in stash, could not be in stash, depends on like if I swatch it and I realize it's actually like a little bit too heavy. If I were to make it, I would knit it in Patton's classic wool worsted, which is the yarn that I have tons and tons of. But if I don't knit it in that yarn, I was maybe thinking of knitting for olive cotton merino. It's just like a yarn that I'm interested in. It's not necessarily a very exciting yarn. It is just like one that everyone says is like their favorite yarn. And would I have preferred to get drops cotton merino because it's like $5 a ball instead of knitting for olives, which is like $9 a ball? Yes. And no, the numbers are not absolute, I don't know, but like, you know, one is half the price of the other, and I just feel like for something that is literally the same ingredients list, I would rather try the dupe and see like if I like it and if it, you know, like scratches an itch. But again, like I can't get drops. I can get knitting for olive, and I don't know if Santa's Garn has a type of comparable product that is not more expensive, because as far as I know, I think they do have something like Duo maybe that is half and half, but it's like $12 a ball, and it's a 50-gram ball, and I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. I'm not going to give you $24 for 100 grams of cotton merino. Like, that's absurd. So yeah, those are my options for spring. Again, this was a lot of stuff. All these patterns, or most of these patterns, are in my stash. A lot of the yarns are in my stash. I'm probably going to start with the ones where it's like, yes, like I have the pattern and I have the yarn. But I also would love to, you know, try more summer fibers. Like, I think that might be why I always say, like, I don't like to knit in the summer. First of all, the one summer I was going through a breakup, and the second summer I was dealing with like not knowing how to knit and I only had wool. So like maybe that's not a fair assessment. I don't necessarily know if I actually truly not like to knit in summer. And also, I don't have any like summer fibers, or like I've never really knit on summer fibers before. So it is kind of too soon to say like whether or not, like the jury is still out basically, whether or not I am someone who abstains from summer knitting or not. I know a lot of people kind of switch to sewing over the summer, which makes sense if you are a sewist. I am patently not a sewist, so like I don't have that option. I did mention in my podcast regular like podcast update that like I've been doing other stuff, like I've been coloring and I've been spinning, and like, you know, there are things that don't involve you having like a whole ass sweater made of wool on your lap, but at the same time knitting is extremely portable, and I love knitting in the car, and I love knitting at the desk, and I love knitting at my lunch break. And so, you know, there are times when I can't do other things, but I can knit, and so it would behoove me to find like a couple of knit projects to kind of get started on. And that would be nice. And, you know, given all of the projects that I have on the needles already for springtime, which include, you know, my Hannah sweater and my Norma sweater and the Cecilia check, like those are all fall sweaters, and they're great and they're lovely and I'm really happy I have them, but I would love to have like some smaller, lighter weight stuff that I could actually take into summer with me. So that was it. That was the tour of my stash and /or stash plans and /or future spring making ideas, bingo board, etc., etc. Let me know what you guys are doing for spring. If you guys are just kind of like finishing things up. I am worried because this is like plans for the next 3-ish months. Will I be able to finish 7-8 garments in the next 3 months? I don't know. I have no metric. I've literally not knit this time of year ever. I always end up stopping sometime around now. So yeah, if I can like power through these knitted sweaters, I can definitely power through lighter weight garments, shorter sleeve garments, etc. I didn't pick anything too skinny. So that is it. Please, by all means, drop down your suggestions, your comments. They're very much so solicited. If you've actually knit any of these, or if you've knit any of these designers, let me know. Some of them are new to me, some of them are not. And yeah, I'm curious to know what you guys think. Eventually I will come to some kind of conclusion because I have to cast on eventually, but yeah, you'll hear about it in the podcast episodes to come. Way more down the pipeline, I think I've already mentioned, but we've got a couple of like dupe videos down the line. We've got a interesting like to stash or not to stash, and of course your regular podcast updates. So hopefully we will keep things coming. Thank you again so much for spending some time with me, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!